Both Koscheck and Ellenberger embody the athletic wrestle-boxer archetype. They seamlessly blend the classic American martial arts of wrestling and boxing in a potent cauldron filled with power, speed, explosiveness, and raw athletic prowess. Skill-wise and attribute-wise, it's tough to differentiate between them. Both have the strength of a powerlifter and the 0 to 60 acceleration of a running back. And both have built their games around the modern base of freestyle wrestling and upgraded offense with combination boxing. And they've rounded out the picture with crushing grappling and dynamite ground striking. If we are going to look for differences in these two, we will not find many in their physicality or their combat tools. So what differentiates these combatants? Well, let's look at the big picture. The development in skill and artistry in sport does not happen overnight. It evolves, progresses, it upgrades over time. We're all aware of this in most mainstream sports. If we talk about old-time hockey, it conjures up images in our minds, as does talk of classic football or the good old days of old-timey boxing. Modern mixed martial arts is no different. It has a rich history, a lineage, a bloodline of evolution from the early days of fighting right to today. And if we want to dig into tonight's matchup between Koscheck and Ellenberger, we need to examine one arm of the UFC family tree. Let's study the lineage, the bloodline of the athletic wrestle-boxer. Hit me. We got to start at the top with the Godfather, Dan the Beast Severn. This man pioneered wrestling in mixed martial arts. He started in the game as an All-American for Arizona State. He was a U.S. Olympic team alternate, and he made his debut at UFC 4. Look at this man. It's just stepping into the cage and using what comes natural. That's wrestling. He didn't know much how to use almost anything else, and when you struck with him, he closed the distance, took you down, and he tried to beat you up as best he could. Dan the Beast Severn has 101 wins in mixed martial arts and still competes occasionally today. And he is the beginning. And he heads straight in to version 1.0 of the athletic wrestle-boxer, Mark the Hammer Coleman, the elite of the elite in wrestling, and he represented the U.S. in the 1992 Olympics in Barcelona. And he took the wrestling grind and he brought it to MMA, push and push and push and grind and try to break you. But if he didn't, that was his Achilles heel. If he couldn't break you, he might fade later in the fight, and that was the Achilles heel of the 1.0 wrestle-boxer. And the Hammer, he begat the monster, Kevin Randleman. Had 3 of the most winning years ever at Ohio State as an All-American, and Randleman debuted as a Vale Tudo fighter in Brazil before the term MMA even existed. Just like the Hammer, he put it on you. He put it on you. He drove. He was aggressive. He used the wrestler's mentality in fighting, and he tried to break you. But if he could not break you, he would fatigue so much as well. That was part of the definition of the 1.0 era of the wrestle-boxer. And if you look at these men, they pioneered wrestling and boxing as a combination in mixed martial arts. So those are a few of the gentlemen that stood as the building blocks for the prototype we call the athletic wrestle-boxer today. With a few key changes to the progression of the athletes and their skills and strategies, the 21st century MMA wrestler, or the athletic wrestle-boxer 2.0, began to evolve and continues to progress to this very day. There's a number of athletes that can lay claim to carrying on that bloodline. Let's take a look at a couple of them. Hit me with the viz. Wrestling 2.0, Wrestle-Boxer 2.0, it could not start without the Huntington Beach bad boy, Tito Ortiz. He didn't start out as the elite of the elite in wrestling. He just made it a base for his full, well-rounded game that he brought to the game. And he took you down like a wrestler, outstanding double legs, but he added in striking, he added aggression, and he really took ground striking to another level. And one other thing Ortiz should be credited with is bringing showmanship to this sport. This guy was a star, really, truly the first true star of the wrestle-boxing archetype. And from the bad boy, we go to the big game hunter, Matt Hughes. Matt Hughes potentially could be viewed as the greatest welterweight champion of all time. Of course, GSP as well. The full, well-rounded game. The 2.0 athlete could do 15 minutes as needed, 25 minutes as needed. They did not fade and fatigue like the 1.0s. These guys did the full game, fully well-rounded. And if you follow that evolution, you get to Josh Koscheck, the ultimate heel. Josh Koscheck is the fully developed MMA wrestle boxer, the athletic wrestle boxer that took down GSP and beat Hughes and took the torch from him. He carries on that great tradition, and he carries it on today like so many other great athletes in the UFC. It's a pleasure to watch him. And this is our matchup with the Juggernaut. A murderous row of studs continue to carry this torch, but what about Jake Ellenberger? He ties into the 1.0, the Hammer and the Monster, and in the tradition of those men, he still fights with that Juggernaut urgency. He comes at you and he tries to get you out of there immediately. It's a pace issue, and that is the difference between him and Koscheck. You see in this 4-fight stretch, really 4 of his best moments in the UFC, he took out 2 men in the first round, 13 first-round finishes, and then he puts it on you like we see with Diego Sanchez here, but then he would fade, and Sanchez came on in the 30, won that fight, but also against Martin Kampmann. He would pressure Kampmann, look to break him, but look here. Fades, much like Coleman, much like Randleman, gives all kinds of heat, but if he can't get you out of there, he may slow down. Will that be the difference in this fight? Because this man, Martin Kampmann, found a way to finish him. So the Juggernaut versus the heel. Josh Koscheck versus Jake Ellenberger. This is a beautiful, beautiful matchup, and it's a very important fight in the history of the athletic wrestle boxer in the UFC. I'm really looking forward to this one. Mixed martial arts is a beautiful sport that, although young, already has a rich, rich history. Thank you all for taking this ride with me down the flowchart of the athletic wrestle boxer's winding road as we anticipate Jake Ellenberger versus Josh Koscheck coming up tonight. And thank you so much for joining me in the Black Eye. Enjoy the hostilities, my friends.